Hi guys, so I'm Josh. I work at Eric, obviously. I'm scouting data and automation lead. But when you say that and you just put a title and you have, my name's Josh, I do this, it doesn't really give you the journey and it doesn't really give you it makes it seem like it's always been this way. So my career journey hasn't been super straightforward, really. I graduated uni with television and radio. I got a 2-1. But in between that, I've traveled, I've done skills boot camps, I've done apprenticeships, I've done BTECs, I guess. And it's been a super strange journey that hasn't been straightforward and it hasn't been linear. So within this talk I'm going to do, I'm going to explain exactly sort of what I do, how I got there, and my best advice for you guys to take a bit from my journey and go forward. So the bread and butter of my role is that I find ops and I post them through Eric Recommends. Um, the second part, and this is something slightly more recent, is I automate the mundane. So a lot of my role is looking on different websites, searching the web, searching social media, and finding opportunities that aren't easily available to the average person. And I've learned to use different AI tools to scrape the internet. So I'm using vibe coding and using NAN and a bunch of other things. I've learned how to basically. I used to go to 1,000 different websites every day, and now I basically click a button, and I have a script that scrapes all those websites, and then I have AI bots that automate the the way that I used to have to go in and look at if they're relevant or not relevant. And now I have an AI automation that does that. And another part of my role is I provide insights into the user data. So every Monday, I post a message into the Slack channel, and we just talk about how the app's growing week on week, and then we make some insights based on that data. So, how did I actually end up in this role? So when I graduated, graduated with a television and radio degree. And if I'd told myself, back in 2022, you'd be working in automation. I mean, I was thinking about this. I don't even think like ChatGPT was around when I actually graduated, which weirdly makes me sound super old because it feels like it's been in our working life, especially, forever. But yeah, where was my point? Basically, I television and radio degree, and now I'm in this like weird role that I find even hard to explain. But I returned home unsure of my next steps. I had to move back to Birmingham, where I went to uni in Manchester. So that was a big like step back for me, and it was really hard to know, right, what's the next step, because television didn't seem, although I'd done a creative media BTEC and then I'd done a degree. I think a lot of the time you follow the path that has the least resistance. And for me, I remember someone saying you should go do a television and radio degree, and I didn't realize as long as you've got the qualifications, the A levels or the BTEC, you can go study whatever you want at uni. It doesn't have to, be the same as what you did at college. Or it may help get you onto the course, but your options are actually not as limited as I thought at the time. And I'd gone and done that television and radio degree, and by the end of it, I'd realised I didn't love being on set. The whole like commit a week, do nothing else, be part of that like that massive team where you have like a very small role, and it's very like teamwork based. That didn't actually suit me, and I always knew that I was somebody who liked to have projects that I could just focus on myself and almost be like the whole process. So that's why editing at the time was kind of my niche. But um, I found editing roles really hard to come by, and I just wasn't really convinced that I could make a career of it. So there was a couple different things where I was like, do I do this? Do I do that? I ended up doing a skills boot camp, which wasn't great. It wasn't. It was one of those skills boot camps that hadn't actually put together a plan for your employment, and they wanted you to do a course at the end of it, but it basically didn't work out. So after this, I'd done a degree, done a skills boot camp, and I had, a lot of pressure. Like, what are you actually going to do with your life, Josh? And my dad had told me that he could get me a job at a printing company. This is not something I was, really wanted to do. Not something I particularly thought I'd even be good at. But at the time, it was like I needed some money. I needed a path forward, and it was the best option at the time. It was better than sitting at home and being on the dole. So I did that job for it. Thinking back, maybe 3 or 4 months, and I was genuinely awful at it. I remember telling my mum used to drive me into work because she worked in a similar place in Birmingham. And I remember saying, how did I go from such a high getting a creative degree to now being at a printer's in the back end of Digbeth in Birmingham, not being any good at the job really, feeling depressed every day, feeling like I had no direction. And it was a really tough time in my life. I remember it actually all came to an end. Maybe it was about 3 years, or it was 2 years actually. Like, now we broke up for Christmas, and I was like, thank God I've got this time off to kind of breathe, think about what I've got, what I'm going to do. And I ended up just breaking down to my dad, and then shortly after I left that place. So this is like where it gets a lot better. So I was then unemployed again, and I'd decided to go, do a little internship at somewhere that we actually work at. We work with now, called BritAsia, and that was more similar to what I did at uni. It was creative. They had like a lot of social media, and I was thinking maybe I could get into that side of things. It was, even though I was going a couple of days a week, it was still hard to get my foot in the door. And at this point, I'd lost a lot of like morale, because I was thinking, I've tried so many things, nothing's working out. Anyway, one day a friend sends me a TikTok of what actually happens to be my boss now, doing a TikTok about they want, at the time it was a copywriting apprentice and a data apprentice. Now again, data, not something that I'd ever even thought about doing, but it was at a company that I thought, I like the vibe of the company. I like what they stand for. I like what they're doing. I think I could make a difference at that company. So I applied for that job off the TikTok, got interviewed by May and Sam, and then maybe a couple of weeks later, I got the job. And then honestly, from there, I think May would agree. I think Sam would agree. I've just been progressing and progressing, and there's been so many things where I've thought, I don't even know if I'm capable of doing this project. But Sam and May have always put that faith in me, and I've always managed to like exceed my goals. And I think when you find that niche within a workplace, and you find those projects and those tasks that you can do competently, and you can actually exceed, the rewards from that, it's just great, and it really builds your confidence, and it really makes you think, okay, I have a place in the workplace, and I'm so much more confident in so many different things now, even just communicating. If we go back to the last slide, I wouldn't have known how to use any automation tools in the past. I wouldn't have known how to even start with coding. And now I'm growing and growing in confidence in it, and I can only thank the opportunity at Eric for getting me there. So this has always been one of my favorite quotes, and the older and older I get, the more it makes sense to me. It's, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards. I think Steve Jobs said it at the end of his like Harvard graduation speech. But if we go back to here, if I'd never gone home, I would have never started, all this step, which was my downward spiral, kind of like this bit here in the line graph. And I would have never got to the point where I went, right, I might need to just do an apprenticeship here, start again, be humbled, start back from like being 16 where, you've got to work your way up. And then from that, I've been able to grow so much because I decided that I took a couple of steps back to go a couple of steps forward, essentially. So when we get to like advice, so apart from just focusing on exactly what you're doing at the time and doing your best, I'd say worry less about the route, do what you can today and trust the direction. Every step of that path that I had to do, I still had to work my very hardest. In the printing job that I had no business being there, I still had to work as hard as possible to get to this step. Let's have a look at some of the other steps I went to. Working, I haven't put it here, but working at that internship, if I hadn't worked super hard at that internship, I wouldn't have been able to sort of talk, get the references from BritAsia and talk about, my experience there. And actually from that internship, BritAsia actually signed on as a client. So all these things, eventually they connect to your path, is kind of the point I'm trying to get across. And this one is something that I've learned a little bit more recently, but if you don't feel challenged, you're not growing, fail forward. I've always been somebody who just throws myself into a task or a project. Most recently, I took the initiative to make direct portal changes. So we have like a client portal, and in my head, I have no business, being in a portal. And I'm not going to say it's been easy, but through that process, it's been stressful, but I've learned so much. And when the pressure's on you, it's a cliche, but like pressure really does make diamonds. And I've learned how to actually do a coding workflow. And I don't want to get too into the technical bits of it, but I find the only way I learn is through doing and making mistakes. And if you're too scared to make those mistakes and challenge yourself, and sometimes be in those tough situations where your neck's on the line a little bit, you're never really going to grow or change or get to the next level. So although, it's difficult, I'd say you need to put yourself in those positions every now and then. So that's all I've actually got, guys. I hope it was useful. I hope you can take some sort of thing from my journey and apply it to yours. But I guess my ending message would be just try as hard at the thing you're doing right now. Trust the direction, trust the journey, and you'll get to the place that you're meant to be eventually. So, yeah, thanks, guys, and enjoy the rest of the talks, I guess.